video is to talk about Jen Shah. So Jen Shah starred on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Ironically, a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have even known who she was. I just started watching the first season of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City probably about a few months ago. I was, browsing through one of the streaming apps. I'm like, oh, I never saw this one. So that's interesting. But we want to look at her chart to see any possible chart placements that could indicate someone who could get caught up in having running a scam, running a scheme, being in charge of some type of deception. And I do want to, as a disclaimer, share this is not all that an individual is, right? So I'm talking in particular about this aspect of her chart, okay? The fact that she recently was charged, well, she was sentenced on January 6th of 2023, like a few days ago, she was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. And it is because apparently she was charged with conspiracy, this is according to wikipedia.org, conspiracy to commit money laundering and wire fraud, pleading not guilty to both charges. She pleaded not guilty, but of course she was found guilty. What I understand about the situation is that she was a part of this scheming, money laundering scheme that took a lot of money from a lot of elderly victims. So, preying on people who are more vulnerable. And I also want to make the disclaimer that I am not saying that if you have these placements, that you are going to do the same thing. With astrology, we have to look at what something means and then see what are the possibilities. Meaning, she's a Libra. Under the sign of Libra, yes, we have the basics, but there's a list of other things associated with Libra, right? She has a lot of Scorpio energy in the chart. Well, 2 placements in Scorpio. Under Scorpio, if we were to look at a comprehensive list of everything Scorpio can be, there would be a long list, right? So I want to put that into those two. I'm going to just really, reinforce those 2 things. This is not all Jen Shah is. I don't know a ton about her besides some of the things I've seen on the show. So we are just talking specifically about what in someone's chart could lead them to be a part of a situation like this. And I believe it lasted for about 10 years. So this is not something that happened for a month and then they're like, it's something that is easily resolved. Apparently there's $10 million in fraud that occurred. It's very extreme. It's interesting because she is married to Sharif Shah, who's a football coach. They've been together for, I don't know how long, but it's been a very long time. I would say they've been married since 1994. They have 2 sons together. So, and also Shah is of Tongan and Hawaiian descent. She's a Mormon. She converted to Islam. So with those details, we would be looking for 9th house placements. We don't have her birth time. I don't have her birth time. Therefore, this is not an accurate depiction of what her chart actually looks like. We're just going to look at what we do know. We do know she's a Libra sun at the 11th degree. We do know she has Mercury in Scorpio. We do know she has Venus in Scorpio. We do know she has the North Node in Capricorn. We do know Neptune's in Sagittarius. We do know she's a moon in Capricorn. The moon did not change placements that day, signs that day. However, we don't know the exact degree of the moon without the birth time. We do know she's a Mars in Taurus. We do know she has Saturn in Cancer. We do know she has South Node in Cancer. Okay, so there are some things that we do know. The part of fortune is also a little bit up to debate when you don't have a birth time. So the midheaven is up for debate, the ascendant, the IC, so forth. But we can look at some of this. So I just wanted to give the background in case you're not sure who she is. Thinking of all the change, her being of a different background than many of the people in Salt Lake City, I would want to see something in the 9th house of, being in some way different, being from a different, community or a different culture. So in her actual birth chart, I'm pretty sure maybe there are some 9th house energy, but if there's no 9th house energy, she does have Sag energy. And so what's interesting here, and I'll go into the charges in a moment, is that she does have Juno in Sagittarius. Sagittarius, we know the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. Jupiter could represent the spouse. Her and her husband, of course, are of different backgrounds. Her husband is Black American, and of course, I just told you Shah's background. So that's interesting is that she does have Juno in Sagittarius. Of course, Sagittarius Juno can mean other things as well. You don't have to be a part of an interracial relationship, but that is a component, perhaps. Also, it's at the 16th degree in the degree system I use. This could represent their marriage, that there has been a lot of learning that they've had to do in terms of emotional development. And again, Juno can sometimes get really nuanced because, you know, only two people really know the full length of their relationship. But I did find that interesting. So let's jump into these charges, okay? So I just explained what the charges are. If we're looking at greed and scamming, a person likely to be interested in money, we have to look at what is the motivation. She's a moon in Capricorn. So this is a person who is driven by a need to achieve, all right? A need to be also seen as someone who is achieving. So, and also if we did really do a chart rectification, that's a very extensive process. You would need to know a lot about the person's life to really be accurate, right? I wouldn't be surprised if the moon the moon in Capricorn would be in her 11th house or her 10th house or her 5th house, because we're looking at what is motivating her, right? And so it's not just about being seen as, you know, respected, which is a Capricorn thing. It's about, if you watch the show, she is someone who puts on parties. She does care about having the finer things in life, having the nicer things in life, right? So the moon being in Capricorn, we would want to see that in a house where there's a dependency on this keeping up with the Joneses type of energy. However, we also want to look at the fact of what signs can be associated with I need more, I need more, I need to possess this. That's Scorpio, right? And in terms of resources and wealth, we are thinking of Taurus, okay? So it's not surprising that she has Taurus and Scorpio in her chart. Again, I'm not saying if you have these in your chart, you're just like her. It means that if you have Scorpio in your chart, there's going to be an area in your life where you do like to possess and control and obtain things. So if you have Jupiter in Scorpio, that's going to be different than having Venus in Scorpio, of course. She has Venus in Scorpio, okay? It's almost like what she wants, she can't, fathom not really having it. You know, if you're looking at the 24th degree, this is about a really close attachment, a little bit of a delusion sometimes. The 24th degree is not a bad degree at all. A lot of times it means enlightenment spiritually, but we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about someone who obtained money, Venus, in ways that were dishonest. And so Scorpio can deal with secrecy, okay? She also has Venus conjunct Pallas in Scorpio. She's really good. When she wants something, she's able to obtain things in way using her relationships, using her charm, using her connections. Now again, that's not a bad thing to do, but in this case, unfortunately, did end up in her, being involved in this scheme. She also has Mercury in Scorpio, 2nd degree. She can sometimes hide things until she's ready to fully explain and express what it is that she really wants. Now, again, I'm saying it again. These videos are for astrological purposes, not to really cast judgment. Of course, we know it's wrong to defraud people, especially when we think of defrauding elderly people who are already vulnerable. A lot of people, there was their life savings. So it's definitely not a good thing. But I also want people to understand astrologically, this is studying what planets would be involved if we're talking about money. Scorpio energy would be the sign. We look at Venus. Well, let's look at Pluto. Because we know Pluto, it can be hiding. It is transformative, but it's also life-changing. Okay, so Pluto's in Libra in her chart, conjunct her sun. Now, the sun conjunct Pluto can mean there's an importance of consuming and empowering oneself, right? Through this Libra, being a Libra, she shows and shines in situations when she's with someone. Now, in her case, we know this was not a scheme she did all by herself. And what I read or heard is that she was saying she thought she deserved 3 years because she's like, I wasn't doing this by myself, right? That's a very Libra thing. When Libra does get in trouble, Libra does not want to admit that it's the bad guy or the bad girl. Like Libra wants to maintain this kind of presence, this kind of charm, but it wasn't me. It's very uncomfortable sometimes for Libra to experience that, being the lone person. Well, she's not the lone person involved, but it's not surprising, right? That this scheme is not something that she's completely doing by herself. But that's something just to keep in mind there. Now, in general, the Sun conjunct Pluto probably in her life helped her be very determined, be very much someone who is has a very strong personality. She has a very strong personality, but it's in efforts to be liked, right? There's a Libra nature to that. Now, Mercury, I'm bouncing around a little bit. This is not a birth chart reading. This is me just on the fly, pulling up this chart and on the fly looking at some of the aspects. Mercury in Scorpio is opposing Mars and Taurus. So Mars and Taurus, let's talk about this. Mars and Taurus can represent the approach to action. And with Mars being in Taurus, it's about this slow moving action, but it is about patience. Like this was something developing over time. Okay. But Mercury is opposing Mars. Mercury in Scorpio, I just talked about, can withhold things or just know a lot, but not always be very forthcoming and revealing everything. Mercury in Scorpio is always also very good at knowing things behind the scenes. So it's actually beneficial because there are likely, again, she has owned businesses before. That's the general energy of terms of like, there's always something Scorpio is trying to kind of master or control. Now, that, of course, can end up bad when you are trying to control something. So Mercury opposing her Mars could represent dishonesty and intention and actions, you know, not really being forthcoming in what her approach and what she is trying to do. You also want to look at, if we're thinking of money and risks, we're going to look at Jupiter. Mercury is squaring, where's Jupiter at in this chart? Mercury is squaring Jupiter. Right here, Jupiter is in Aquarius. If you have Jupiter in Aquarius, your reach can really help communities or groups of people. You know, you have that ability, you have that influence, and you want to make sure that you use your influence well. But with Mercury squaring Jupiter, Mercury being ideas, communication, the mind, it can mean bad ideas that are for gain. Again, I don't know her birth time. If you look at this off the bat, you could say, oh, this could kind of match, you know, this chart here could maybe match. But at the end of the day, we don't know her time, so I don't want to make any type of assumptions. But we can look at these planets. Of course, Saturn is also conjunct the South Node. So any planet conjunct your South Node is telling you of your past life tendencies. Past life tendencies to try to be someone who is authoritative, maybe in terms of family dynamics, in terms of trying to have things that are yours. I bet you if you ask her why she did it, there's probably some component of, I wanted to make sure my family was, you know, secure. I wanted to make sure, like, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the money from this went to endeavors that deal with the family, right? Upgrading the home, doing this or that. Which is very interesting because, you know, again, her husband is a football coach. You know, he has his own money. Again, I don't know how much they have collectively. She was doing the show, but apparently this, you know, the scheme that she got caught up in, or she, you know, was part of, was lasting for 10 years. Pluto is also, if we look at Pluto, Pluto is squaring Saturn. Now, when you have a Pluto-Saturn square, you have to be very careful about accountability. You have to be careful about karmic energy. You have to be really careful about what you're trying to control. Okay. You know, it may start off as something that you are trying to do to be seen as more successful, you know, but Pluto does not know how to stop. It knows how to consume. And so the more you get, Saturn and Cancer, I'm comfortable now. I'm comfortable. Saturn and Cancer energy can be about, you feel most aligned with something that's familial, something that is safe, that feels safe. So it's almost like, I don't know if this started off as, oh, this is going to be a big scheme and scam. And I don't know, again, this is all speculation. I don't know. You can go online and read the same information as me, but I'm just looking at these placements as what it can mean. Again, I cannot put a stamp on this is exactly what it is, but what I'm sensing here about this is like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a situation that did not start off as like supposed to be this big. It was not supposed to be this big. It might have started off as something that was actually legal, and then somehow, again, I don't know who else is involved, it became bigger than life. And so when you have Saturn in Cancer, you are supposed to learn how to be in your authentic sense of self, but also learning not to just go by things that are going to just keep you in a sense of stability without working hard for what you want. But the North Node being in Capricorn is signaling that it's important to care about your reputation. It's important to care about what you are building. The second degree reminds you of that. And it's also conjunct the Black Moon Lilith in Capricorn. Okay, so there's already, that would be a warning. Fifth degree, pleasures, things you want, joy. Being careful of not over abusing what you like in order to gain and to have some sense of power, or to feel that you have a better image or you have a better lifestyle. I wouldn't be surprised if some of this is about lifestyle. This money afforded the opportunity for her to feel that she can maybe, be more a part of these communities that she's in. She's on the show. She was on the show Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And again, these are just astrological interpretations. There are positive things, of course, in her chart that I'm sure benefited her throughout life. But the focus of this is to use astrology to talk about how some placements can get caught up in money, in financial power. And I'm sure there are aspects that I missed. This is a quick video.